I feel like I need to say something about my retirement. It's not going to happen anytime soon. At least I'm thinking right now, the end of 2018, so that's over 2.5 years. But some of you, we announced this at the annual meeting back in December. And some of you have forgotten or weren't here at the meeting and didn't know it. But the elders have said that they want us to stick around, so that's what we're planning to do. We own our house here, along with the bank, and so our plan is to stay here, to be involved in the church, and though we won't be the preaching minister anymore, we'll still be here. And so, it's not like you're going to not see us one day, because as far as I know, as long as the Lord keeps us around here, we're going to continue to serve here with you. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us. We're glad to share the plan. The plan is kind of to get a younger fellow to come in. Of course, you probably have to be younger than me anyway. But, and I would mentor him for a while as I go part-time in 2018, and then just kind of fade away out of the picture, at least as being a preacher. So that's kind of the plan. And the reason we're announcing it this far ahead, I could have not said anything until the last moment. Hey, we're going to retire. But we wanted the transition to be as smooth as possible because, our heart's really here. And whoever comes next, we want to help them just pick right up where we left off. So, and keep the church going forward and upward. All right, enough of that. I'm going to talk to you today about giving. And they're not counting the offering right now. In case we didn't give enough, pass it again. Or anything like that. But Jesus talks more about giving than he did about anything else. So it's not a subject that I can avoid preaching about. And the passage we're going to look at today comes from Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. And the title message today is Having the Right Attitude About Giving. And the lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, What is written in the law? How does it read to you? And he answered, You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your strength, with all of your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But wishing to justify himself, he said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? Jesus replied and said, A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers. And they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. And by chance a priest was going down on that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion, and came to him and bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. And he put him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day he took out 2 denarii, and gave them to the innkeeper, and said, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you. Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell into the robber's hands? And he said, The one who showed mercy toward him. Then Jesus said to him, Go and do the same. Now, you might think, what did that have to do with giving? Well, I'm going to tell you. In Leadership Magazine, Eric Holster writes this. He says, While I was preaching one Sunday, an elderly woman, Mary, fainted and struck her head on the end of the pew. Immediately, an EMT in the congregation called for an ambulance. As they strapped her to the stretcher and got ready to head out the door, Mary regained consciousness. She motioned for her daughter to come near. Everyone thought she was summoning up her strength and was going to say her last words. But she didn't. The daughter leaned over until her ear was next to her mother's mouth. And this is what the woman said. "My offering is in my purse." The elderly woman was a remarkable person. She showed what was the highest priority to her. To be a servant, to be a steward of the gifts that God had given her. And even though they were wheeling her out on the stretcher, she didn't want her offering to not get put in the offering plate when passed. Stewardship means this: using God-given abilities to manage God-given resources to accomplish God-ordained results. I'm going to say that again. Stewardship means using God-given abilities to manage God-given resources to accomplish God-ordained results. That's what stewardship is. And that's important. When I think of stewardship, I'm probably like all of you. I think of money. And that's true. Stewardship does have to deal with our money. But it's much more than just our money. Giving money to the church is important because that is a part of our stewardship, but it's more than that. Stewardship is about so much more. I want you to think about, what is stewardship really all about then? Stewardship is about having the right attitude behind your giving and your serving. I think that's what's really important about stewardship. It's not about what you give or what you do for God. It's about why you do those things. Because if you're doing them for the right reason, then the results will take care of themselves. If you give money or resources to God with the wrong attitude, then you're just not being a good steward. If you do ministry by serving in the church with the wrong attitude, then you're not being a good servant either. The parable of the Good Samaritan, which we read here, is a parable about the attitude of stewardship that we are supposed to have. There are three attitudes on display in this parable I want us to look at this morning. Many churchgoers exhibit one of these, or maybe sometimes more than one of these. Here's the first one. It's in verse 30. What's yours is mine, and I'm going to have it. You see, the thieves on the road had this attitude. As this man was going along on his journey, these robbers beat him up and steal everything he has. They saw that what he had was theirs and they were going to have it. In fact, as Christians, we know that that's the wrong attitude, don't we? It's the wrong attitude to think that something that somebody else has is yours and you're going to take it. That's wrong. Even the world, who doesn't really know or believe in God, knows that that's not right. Malachi 3, verses 8 through 10, speaks to Israel, and I think to us too. It's where God says this: "Will a man rob God? Yet you are robbing me." But you say, "Well, how are we robbing you?" "In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house, and test me now to see, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open up to you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing without until it overflows." Some argue that this is the Old Testament, and so we don't have a tithe anymore. But Jesus himself said that unless our righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees, we have no part in heaven. So if the Pharisees thought that you ought to give 10%, then that means we ought to do even better than that. Let's say you've gone out to eat to a fancy restaurant, like a lot of us will do after the service is over. The waitress attends to your every need and takes care of you pretty well. You eat a tasty meal, and at the end, you're very satisfied. In fact, probably you'll eat too much, if the truth be known. What's the last thing you're going to do before you exit the restaurant? It's probably going to be leaving a tip. The tip you leave will speak about you. Now, if you leave the restaurant, you put a tip on the table. If you put no tip on the table, what's the waitress going to think? Well, she'll probably say, did I do that bad of a job and I didn't deserve a tip? Or more likely, she's probably going to think, that guy's a skinflint. He robbed me. Tell me this, do you owe her a tip? Well, probably no, but if you understand how waitresses are paid, you know that they are expecting a tip because they only get a very small salary for being a waitress. And so the tips have to make up for that. A waitress deserves a tip to compensate her for the low wage that she has, or he has. Your tip shows your appreciation for her service to you. And you know, it's really sad that Sundays, Christians go out to eat and they have a bad reputation of being the worst tippers. We ought to have the reputation of being the best tippers because we know what it means to tithe. For the Christian, the tithe might not be required of us. You want to think of it that way. But if God thinks it's important, then we ought to be doing the tithe if we really love Him. If He's really the God we tell our neighbors that He is, then the attitude we have about our giving ought to be high priority in what we do. The first attitude that some churchgoers exhibit is that yours is mine and I'm going to have it. And that's wrong. But there's another attitude we see in verses 31 and 32. It says this, what's mine is mine and I'm going to keep it. What's mine is mine and I'm going to keep it. You remember who Jesus said passed away, passed by on the other side? This robber that had been beaten and left. The robbers had beaten and left for dead. It was religious people. The priest and the Levite, both religious leaders. We could substitute in there Christians. They were people who were trained to serve God. They were people who were trained to be compassionate and help other people. But what did they do in this parable? They passed by on the other side. They see the man laying there bleeding and don't lift a finger to help him, but pass by on the other side. They must not have included helping the beating man in some of the training they had had. You know, well, you're supposed to show compassion on people, but if you see a robber laying on the road, just pass him by, because they didn't stop and help at all. In order for them to help this man, they'd have to give up something important to them. In other words, they'd have to give up some of their time. They'd have to do a little work. They'd have to get dirty. And everybody knows a priest and a Levite, they have to stay clean. They had been trained to do ministry, but when the time came and and the opportunity arose to do ministry, they passed it on by. How many times have you and I had the opportunity to do ministry and we passed on by? Their attitude was, what's mine is mine, and I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to share it with you. They were not being good stewards either. There's a third attitude of giving that I see here in verses 33 through 37. It's this: what is mine is yours, and I'll share it. What's mine is yours, and I'll share it. The Samaritan was not trained in ministry. In fact, he was kind of an outcast as far as the Jews were concerned. He was a half-breed. He didn't really count. But unlike the Levite and the priest, he did not pass by on the other side. The Samaritan was probably not wealthy, especially when you consider the priest and the Levite. He was not in the same financial bracket as they were. I'm sure this Samaritan had other things he needed to do, because it says he was on a journey. He was going someplace. He had something in mind, but yet he took the time. As the Scripture says, he had compassion on this man who he did not know from anybody. And he did not walk by. Instead, he stopped and he did what he could. He wasn't a doctor, as far as we know. And yet he bandaged up the guy's wounds, took him to the inn, used oil and wine, which was, that was the best medication he could offer. And he helped the man. He even told the innkeeper, here's a couple of denarii, and when I come back, if you spent more than that, I'll repay you for anything that it cost you over that. What was the difference in the attitude of all these people in this parable? The priest, the Levite, the robbers, the Samaritan? I think it was the attitude, wasn't it? See, the Samaritan's attitude was, what's mine is yours, and I'm going to share it. I'm going to help you. And so he did not pass on by on the other side. He had the attitude that he could overcome any prejudice. It didn't matter who the guy was that was beaten up and laying there on the road. He was going to help him no matter who he was. He was able to overcome and ignore the inconvenience. He could take the time, stop his journey until he could care for this man, to the point where he could then go on and complete his journey. We don't know if he was going to pass by that same way on his return, or whether he was going some other way. My wife always gets on me because when I go someplace, I always go home a different way, because I like to see different territory. But I don't know what this guy was going to do. But anyway, he decided he would come back this way, because he would settle the account, if there was one, at the end. This man was willing to give up his possessions to take care of this man. His attitude was what made this story worth telling, I think. Jesus told this as a parable. Whether it actually was a true story or not, we assume that it probably was. In answering this question that was asked him, who is my neighbor? What is the right attitude for a good steward to have? I think it's the attitude of ownership. You remember what a steward is, don't you? I told you twice. A steward is someone who takes care of something for someone else. If you're a steward, you don't really own what you have. And I think this is the key to having the right attitude. Understanding that whatever you have is not really yours. You're just the manager of whatever it is. Yeah, you work for it. Yeah, you have it. You can say you own it, but you really don't. Because God's allowed you to have it. It really belongs to Him. And when it comes to our offering, our stewardship of money, we talk about giving back to God what is already His in the first place. Well, it's the same with our time. God has given us our time here on this earth. He's given us our talents. He's given us the ability to work, have a job, make money. And so, all of those things really belong to God. He's just given them to us for a time here on earth to manage. So how are you managing your money, your time, your talents, your abilities, your life? That's stewardship. And all those things come into what we're talking about here, having the right attitude about our giving of our time, of our talent, of our money, of our resources and ability and talents. So if I'm going to be a steward for God, I need to make up my mind that I don't own this stuff. It's not really mine. I'm just managing it for God. I'm just managing my life for Him. Because He's the one that gave me the life that I have. He's the one that gave me the money that I have, the job that I have, the abilities. And so, how am I going to manage those things? I have to remember they all belong to Him. And someday I'm going to have to give an account of how I did all that, how I managed those things. If I master having the right attitude about the things God has given me to manage, then giving is not going to be a problem. I'll be a good steward of everything that God has given me. At one time at the City Temple in London, there was in the congregation a restaurant owner named Emil Mettler. He was a close friend and missions agent of Albert Schweitzer. Mettler would never allow a Christian worker to pay for their meal in his restaurant. But once he did happen to open his cash register in the presence of the secretary of the London Missionary Society. The secretary was astonished to see among all the bills and the coins a 6-inch nail in the cash register on top of the bills. Now you know why you got a nail today when you came into church. If you didn't get one, you want to pick one up. It's probably still out there by the bulletins. What was that nail doing in the cash register? Mettler explained it this way. He said, I keep this nail with my money to remind me of the price that Christ paid for my salvation and of what I owe Him in return. See, Mettler had the right attitude. He realized without God's salvation, he was nothing. And that's the way I feel. Without God's salvation, who am I? I'm nothing. And the nail can remind you of the price that was paid so you can have salvation. So put it somewhere this week where you'll see it. And let it be a reminder to you of the salvation that God gave to you through His Son, Jesus Christ. I'm preaching 3 messages about giving. This is the first one. And I'd like for you to consider the stewardship that you have with God. And if you aren't tithing your income, that's a good place to start. But don't stop there. Consider how you're tithing your time and your abilities and the resources God has given you. Don't forget those as you consider what you're giving to God. So let me challenge you the next 2 weeks to try tithing of your time, of your talents, of your abilities. of your money and see if God doesn't open up the windows of heaven and give you more than what you ever thought imaginable. The Lord said in Malachi, "Test me in this, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have room enough for it all." This morning we're going to sing an invitation hymn. And let me challenge you that as we sing this song, use this as an opportunity to make a decision about what you're going to do and having the right attitude about giving to God. Because He knows it all. What we give back to Him is showing our love to Him. For what He did for us on that cross. You make a decision today. Come as we stand now.